Hello and welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
And this is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling event from a streaming service.
That classic pro wrestling event could be a pay-per-view, it could be a TV special, a big arena show, pretty much anything that isn't weekly television.
And we are back to finish off talking about WrestleMania 19, March 30th, 2003, from Safeco Field in Seattle. The first half of the show is in the books, and now we've had our terrible intermission, and we are ready for some great wrestling to finish out this show.
I don't think either of us, by the way, listened to any Limp Bizkit in between parts 1 and 2 of this show.
I guarantee I did not, and I guarantee someone's going to tweet something at me that has Fred Durst in it after this. So
I look forward to it.
We opened the show. We opened the second half of this show with the World's Heavyweight Championship. The champion is Triple H, and he's managed by Ric Flair. And the challenger.
And he's not only managed by Ric Flair, by the way. This is Triple H doing his 100% Ric Flair cosplay deal. He is dressed like Ric Flair would. He's gotten himself a group like Ric Flair would. He has Ric Flair as his manager. He is everything Ric Flair except for none of the things that are good about Ric Flair as a performer.
And Ric Flair as a performer is so great in this match. We will get to that.
My takeaway from Ric Flair in this match is that Ric Flair should have still been wrestling in WWE at this point.
100% yes.
Borne out by many years later when he was older and not as capable of being in the ring as he would be still at this point. He was still great then.
The challenger is Booker T. Now, the last time on this podcast, we had a great Booker T match. It was him winning the title at the terrible Bash at the Beach 2000 show. So we're big Booker T fans on this show now.
Absolutely. Going back to his Harlem Heat days, going back to his days, at least I do, in global wrestling.
Oh, no, I watched ESPN Global.
Running home from junior high or to watch some global, catch the end of Global on ESPN.
Now, I'm pretty sure that watching this match, I'm like, was watching this video package, I'm like, was the buildup for this match Booker T couldn't be champion because he's black?
Yeah, we'll get into it as this goes along. I don't know that I've ever been more infuriated watching something in professional wrestling than I was watching this video package and then watching this match. I watched this show live on pay-per-view. I recall and have read people's recollections of this storyline and the culmination of it in this match. I was still not prepared for how viscerally angry this would make me. As yes, we have the video package where Triple H says to Booker T that you are a common street thug and someone like you doesn't get to be world champion.
Someone like you. And Lawler will say that repeatedly throughout this match, and JR calls him out on it constantly. What are you trying to say there, King? Why don't you tell me what you really mean?
I've never hated Jerry Lawler more. I've never hated an announcer more than I have here in this match with Jerry Lawler. It starts even as in Booker T's entrance. Lawler's talking about how, the story of Booker T's been on his own since he was 12 when his mom died.
All true
he
stuff.
Made some bad. Yeah, exactly. Real life stuff, which again, this build to this match was using Booker T's real life, hard knocks sort of history, fighting against the odds and making something of his life and getting to this point of, having a shot at the world title at WrestleMania, a redemption story, a make good story. We have Jim Ross laying that out. And then Lawler starts talking about, are you sure we want a world champion that has Johnny Cochran on speed dial? That was the least offensive thing he said in this match, to give you an idea. Meanwhile, Jim Ross is trying to counteract this by saying how much he admires Booker T. The only point of unity between the two announcers in this match was when they both took shots at WCW as Nick Patrick read the rules of this match, because if there's anything you can count on in a WWE pay-per-view, it's them finding a way to continue fighting the war that's already over with WCW.
Which really, you would think that they would be putting over Booker T as a challenger that has a legit chance to win because he, as a WCW five-time WCW champion.
Yeah.
Now, winning being a WCW champion, you could have said, hey, that was a big deal. There were some good guys that were there at the time that he beat, and it really was a thing, and you really could have made it seem like it was an accomplishment, but they just couldn't help themselves and had to.
They literally say
him.
that it's a joke. They literally say WCW is a joke. They say that him winning the championship was a joke. And again, this is a couple years into them owning the rights to everything WCW. You're not winning a war here. You're just cutting yourself off at the knees. Just impossibly stupid. And we have basically, as the match starts, Lawler continues saying very, very thinly veiled racist stuff, like from the beginning, and does not stop.
At least the match was good. Because the build-up is terrible. The announcing is terrible. Everything is terrible, except the match was actually good. Big chops back and forth to start out. People are getting behind Booker. He's immediately cut off with a spine buster by Triple H. We got a good comeback by Booker T. Hard shots, good kicks.
Well, how about Booker very early hitting an arm drag off the top rope? Triple H goes to the top and he's in full Flair cosplay mode. I'm expecting him to get press slammed off the top rope. Instead, Booker runs up the ropes and hits him with an arm drag.
Yeah, Booker looked great early here, except for when he hit a much less good spinebuster on Triple H.
Yes, this was in the pantheon of great Booker T spinebusters throughout the years. This one would be several pages down the list.
Triple H tries to come off the second turnbuckle, but eats a super kick by Booker. Perfectly timed.
Yes. This was awesome. Sort of a flying super kick, almost like a jump side kick. And he nails him with it, but he nails him with it in a perfect pro wrestling way. It wasn't like he actually killed him, but it sure looked
good
like
pro wrestling. Yeah. Booker T goes for another kick, but Triple H moves. Booker ends up crotching himself on the top rope out to the floor. And here, Flair picks up Booker like he's going to drop Booker's leg across his knee, classic Flair figure four setup. But instead, he drops him knee first across the ring steps. That was great. So now this is going to injure Booker's leg for the rest of the match. Flair on the outside is going absolutely nuts. He's going berserk, cheering on Triple H. He is amazing at ringside. He's an amazing manager at ringside. He was great. He was great at being Ric Flair while not taking away from the match, but he was at his Ric Flair best. We also have, when that spot happens on the steps, Lawler is saying that Flair was just trying to help him back in the ring, and Jim Ross loses it and says that logic went out in 1982. Like he completely goes nuts. So there's that. Then we have an awesome spot where Triple H goes for his Indian Deathlock. Initially gets a regular Indian Deathlock, then rolls over to his stomach and presses up. Jim Ross is losing his mind over, I haven't seen this move in a decade. And I'm thinking back and saying, well, yeah, that's true for the most part, but neither of them realized that this was Triple H's finisher in WCW as Terror Rising, which we talked about in 1995. I remember him, having that brief cup of coffee in WCW, and he lost the match to Alex Wright at Starrcade, I believe, 94, and really wasn't seen again. But he used this as his finisher. So I loved that he was going against a WCW guy, and he pulled out his old WCW finisher against him. This Indian Deathlock was awesome, and this move should come back.
Especially the second half of it, where he gets him in it and then rolls over to his stomach. I
like the first half of it.
Come back.
Yeah, I like the first half of it too, where he's like using his other leg to push on it for additional pressure, then rolls it over. This move should come back, but probably with a different name in 2020. But it was perfectly executed here. This was great, and one of my favorite things happens here, where Triple H, he's been working over Booker's leg this whole time. He tries to whip Booker into the corner, but he collapses due to the damage done to his knee. I love that every single time.
Yes,
Booker
absolutely
was fantastic here.
It shows that the injury is so severe that it subverts the laws of wrestling physics, that when you get thrown into the ropes, you have to keep running. He just couldn't do it. Meanwhile, Jerry Lawler he's saying Booker has made wrong decisions all his life. A few minutes earlier, he makes a horrible comment. What was the quote? That Booker T's family portrait is a courtroom sketch.
Yes.
Like I was just like, how did this make air? How is this?
Flair.
It's completely indefensible.
No, it was awful.
Especially in 2003. It's bad enough when you see really overt stuff when you're watching like Mid-South from 1983.
Yeah.
This is 2003 in the WWE.
They were all in on a racial angle in 2003. It was not great. And so what was great was Flair on the outside screaming, "Get up, you damn fool."
Yes, at Booker. That was fantastic.
Triple H, he goes for the pedigree. Booker scoops the legs out. Triple H, from his back, kicks Booker, who squashes Nick Patrick in the corner, but he's okay. This needs to come back, where the referee can get touched and doesn't automatically, he's not murdered just by having physical contact with a wrestler. I liked that Nick Patrick was like, I got squashed, I'm okay.
I will say I was a little bit disappointed in the moment because very few referees take a ref bump better than Nick Patrick. You kind of think someone's on the grassy knoll when he goes down, but no, he absorbed the contact here. He's a large man. He's about the size of a lot of these wrestlers, so he absorbs the contact and keeps going.
Booker had a roll up for a near fall, follows it up by nailing the axe kick, but he's too weak.
And that was his finisher.
That was his finisher
because the bookend was the same move basically as the rock bottom, and you can't have two guys with the same finisher here in this company. So yeah, the axe kick was his move.
But he was too weak to cover right away. He can only get the arm over, so Triple H kicks out.
Remember that, by the way, for a couple minutes from now.
So this was we saw a similar spot in the Chris Jericho Shawn Michaels. We see it here.
It's been established on this show that if you get hit or if you hit someone with the finisher, but it takes you a little while to get there, the opponent is going to kick out.
Especially if you can only get an arm over.
Yes, exactly.
Booker T to the top rope. He nails Flair, who tries to interfere, and Flair goes down in spectacular fashion. I loved Ric Flair taking this bump here.
Yes, and then Triple H catches Booker, who had been distracted by this, goes for the superplex. Booker punches him off, and then Flair tries to catch him again on the apron. Booker fights him off again, so that was awesome. That was, sort of a little surprising kind of flip of the script for outside interference. Then Booker on the top rope, talk about resurrecting old WCW finishers. Booker T hits the Harlem Hangover. Which is a somersault leg drop off the top rope by a man that's got to be 6'3", 6'4", pro wrestling weight, at least 250, 260 pounds. Holy, this was awesome.
That was awesome. JR is screaming. He was screaming about how Flair has no business being up there. He's doing his damnedest to make this match important, despite Jerry Lawler trying to make it not seem that way. And JR continues his greatness all night.
And he's angry, by the way, because, in addition to the clearly racist stuff that Jerry Lawler is saying, Jerry Lawler is also just completely taking the wind out of the sails of this match, as Jim Ross is rightfully so, trying to make this seem like an epic struggle. Lawler is just completely blowing it off. And there's also, in this match, on top of the racist stuff from Lawler, we have something else that continues as the show goes along, where he keeps saying this is WrestleMania.
Oh,
and JR gets so mad, and Lawler clearly recognizes this, or again was told by Vince to go in on this. And he, particularly as we go along the last couple of matches, he says it over and over and over again, trying to get Ross to react on air. It is, if you're paying attention closely, it's one of the more uncomfortable shows to watch from an announcer chemistry standpoint, with Lawler and Ross on here, which is shocking considering how long they worked together. And it usually wasn't like this.
No. And JR was so great though. And So after the Harlem Hangover, this is a huge move, like you mentioned. We Flair ends up putting Triple H's foot on the bottom rope to break up the pin. Booker goes off the top looking for the axe kick again, but crumbles to the ground with his injured knee. And Triple H hits a pedigree, doesn't cover right away, gets the hand on him. 1, 2, 3. He gets the pin. Still heavyweight champion Triple H. Booker does not kick out. This finish was a burial 6 feet underground of Booker T.
This whole thing, all of it was unforgivable. The racist storyline, the racist announcing, the fact that you're at least expecting that the guy who is clearly the face and the underdog and who's being told that he does not deserve to be the champion because of quote unquote who he is, you're expecting he's going to, he's going to be vindicated. He's going to get his victory in the end. He loses. He's made fun of throughout the match. And he loses in a way that makes him look like an absolute geek compared to every other main eventer on this show who was able to kick out from this exact same situation. So this was like I said, the most offensive on 3 or 4 different levels matches and storylines that I've seen in my 36 years as a pro wrestling fan.
No, this was awful. So I had to go back and refresh my memory on was everyone outraged? Am I looking at this through 2020 eyes, or
no,
is everybody out as outraged as me? And I went back and everybody hated this angle going into this. And some tried to defend the racial angles leading up to the match by saying that since Booker was going to win at the end, which was the original plan, it was okay.
Yes, that would be, even though it's not defensible, that would only be the moderately logical, reasonable defense to this, was that you have a dastardly heel who's saying and doing horrible things, but he's going to get his comeuppance.
But once they decided that Triple H was going to win this match, they stopped doing the racial angles on television, and that was so you. But
they didn't stop using. They still use them in the video package here.
But they still used it here, and they still had Lawler doing all of this stuff here. This was the match where JR has had enough of Lawler's crap, like we mentioned. JR is amazing for the rest of the show, and he does a great job of keeping Lawler in check the rest of the way, too. I think Lawler realized he might have gone a little too far here.
Yes and no. He shuts him. I mean, JR does a good job the rest of the show of shutting him down, but I disagree that Lawler realizes that he's gone too far, because in the other matches that he calls on the rest of the show, particularly the Austin Rock match, he keeps still doing the "This is WrestleMania"
He goes to
thing,
"This is WrestleMania" thing.
Yeah,
that's
that. You can hear it. You can hear it in his voice.
Yep.
You can hear it in his voice what he's trying to do with that. It's unmistakable.
18 minutes, 47 seconds in this match.
The action in this match was good.
Absolutely.
It's just everything else
around
about it. The finish, the announcing, and everything around this match is just garbage.
No, the finish for all the stuff they did, for them to finish this way and apparently this had come on the heels of similar burials of other guys who were getting the main event push, like Rob Van Dam.
Well, I also can't remember if it was, I believe it was around the same time when they brought in Scott Steiner, and then Triple H did everything he possibly could to sandbag Steiner and make him look bad in their matches. After Steiner, initially, when they brought him in and they started building to that feud, he was over and it was working.
Sure,
and then,
absolutely.
And then it wasn't.
Vince McMahon versus Hulk Hogan in a street fight. Now, this is one of the matches you could have considered to have been the main event. This got some of the most television time leading up to WrestleMania. So while not in the final position, while still 2 more matches to go, this match was considered, one of the biggest draws. It's actually on the cover of the DVD is Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan in this street fight. And it is bizarre to think that this is actually a professional wrestling match that's happening. But the video package is actually great. It's disappointing that it's Cole calling this, but they talk about it being 20 years in the making. The video package chronicles the history between these two men.
and they interweave sort of storyline with reality as they talk about Hogan turning on Vince in the steroid trial and testifying against him, as that being what planted the seed, for Vince to hate Hogan.
They showed footage from the steroid trial, and
Yes,
Vince McMahon is legit wearing a neck brace. I cried with laughter. I had no idea that he legit had a neck brace on for this trial.
Oh, Carney to the end, for sure.
I need to go back and reread everything about that trial. We don't have time to talk about it now. That's not why you called. We got to talk about this match. But yeah, holy cow, I was crying with laughter. This video package was fantastic. They talked about Hogan leaving for WCW and how that just stabbed Vince in the back.
Well, and then they go overboard. And this is clearly a Vince fed line to Cole before the show, where they talk about that he attacked he attacked Vince McMahon's family, trying to put the family out of business. Like we're seriously trying to make Vince McMahon the babyface here.
No, but it was a great video package. 20 years trying to build up. This match is 20 years in the making, and we see footage of the contract signing of this match.
Yes,
Vince hits Hogan with a chair during the contract signing, stabs him with the pen, and then signs Hogan's name on the contract with his own blood, while Vince is screaming, "He's gonna kill Hulkamania." This was a pretty cool looking angle, from the video package. I don't know how it played on television, but the common theme of this show was whoever was putting together the video packages in WWE in 2003 should have gotten an Emmy Award, because they were off the charts perfection, every single one.
If I'm not mistaken, and maybe the timeline is wrong, but I believe the guy that did a lot of at least the video opens and maybe the packages as well was that David Sahadi, who eventually then went to TNA and did some of their very good video opens or video packages.
It was fantastic work up and down this show with these video packages. This was no different.
Absolutely.
We're told that if Hogan loses, his career is over.
Well, not only is his career in WWE over, at one point, Michael Cole says, and Taz agrees with him, that if he loses, he will not be allowed to wrestle anywhere in the world.
And so we get Hogan's entrance. We get knockoff Voodoo Child music.
Yes.
Hogan used Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child as his theme song in WCW, and again here in WWE. And it was such a cool theme song. I loved Hogan coming out to Voodoo Child. I loved it so much, Adam, that I actually used it at my wedding in 2005. When they
and she still married you?
When they introduced the bride and the groom for the first time, we entered the wedding reception. We came out to Voodoo Child, and I guarantee.
Did you have a feathered boa, a black and white or red and yellow feathered boa? Did one of you go with the NWO boa, the other one with the Hulkamania boa?
Oh no, I guarantee my wife does not know 15 years later what song we used for our entrance, or that it was Hulk Hogan's theme song at the time. No, absolutely not. She has.
Do you think it would have been a bit too obvious if you came out to the Hulk Hogan Real American?
Real American would have been a little too much, but. Yeah, 1 year prior, I was in Toronto. I was sitting 7th row on the floor of Skydome for Hogan and Rock. And that was one of the most amazing live wrestling experiences I've ever had. That crowd atmosphere for that match was unreal. The idea
behind it was that Hulk Hogan was the heel going into that match. He was still Hollywood Hogan.
Yep.
In the brief NWO Redux in the WWF, where Vince McMahon said he was going to unleash the poison of the NWO and kill his own company, the WWF. And so it was Hulk Hogan versus The Rock. Rock is the face, Hogan is the heel. That's not how it worked out.
No, it's a very similar dynamic to our Canadian Stampede show that we reviewed. In the archives of this podcast, where we talked about how amazing that crowd heat was, and how the usual baby faces and the usual heels had flipped roles. It was a very similar experience here, except this wasn't an arena of 20,000. This was Skydome was 60,000, and it was unbelievable being on the floor of that for that moment.
I can't imagine.
And so
I remember watching it on TV and being blown away. I can't imagine. Yeah, especially being on the floor and just hearing and feeling that all around you.
It was unreal. And 1 year later, Hogan is still popular, and from that match, he's still on a nostalgia tour. And that's what this was.
He got a title run. He had a match with Brock Lesnar. Like
yes.
that one night and that crowd gave Hulk Hogan at least another year, if not a couple more years of a run making big money in the WWF.
People saw that. People wanted to experience it, and they wanted to have their own Hogan nostalgia moment. And so he toured on that nostalgia for a year, playing all the greatest hits. Yeah. And this is 1 year later, and I am on the floor at Safeco Field, and I'm not going to lie, I wanted to hear the hits one more time. And I enjoyed this match. I thought this was tons of fun. And
it was far better than it had any right to be, given that you had a gigantic Hulk Hogan who could barely move, and Vince McMahon, who is roided to the gills and not a professional wrestler.
No, Vince McMahon is borderline bigger than Hogan here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the sheer force of the personalities of these two men and the decades-long emotional attachment, whether it be to the good or to the bad for each of these guys with the crowd, it carried them through this.
Slap to the face by Vince starts the match. Hogan takes him down, throws a spear. Yeah, basically a spear, and then throws terrible punches from the mount. It's all Hogan early, beating down
He hits the
Vince.
axe bomber. I love when he hits the axe bomber. His old Japan finisher. His old finisher in New Japan. Just the running clothesline where he basically just puts his arm out in a locked position and runs at you.
Vince eventually gets control and starts working over Hogan's arm. The crowd starts cheering for Hogan, but Hogan's he's on his knees and he's losing a test of strength to Vince McMahon for a long time.
Test of strength spot is longer than the cruiserweight title match, I think.
Yes.
It was there, but it works. There's ebbs and flows, and Hogan almost powers out, and then Vince rakes his eyes or kicks him in the stomach. Yeah, eventually,
but I'm like, come on, like this is Vince McMahon should not be like, Hulk Hogan should power out of this.
Well, but then that's the whole reason that Vince booked this match for himself, so that he could get one, even if he doesn't win the match, that he can get one over on Hulk Hogan in his mind and be winning a test of strength with Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, so there's a kick to the gut. Vince throws Hogan outside. The match is pretty bad at this point, but it's about to pick up and get a lot more fun. Vince gets posted. Hogan nails Vince in the head with a chair, and Vince
waffles him. Absolutely kills him.
Vince is busted open, and it's a gusher. He is bleeding like he's on Starrcade 1986. It's crazy. He's bleeding everywhere. Hogan's punching the cut. It's absolutely gruesome.
This is around the time, by the way, where they inform us casually that they did a Montreal screw job the previous month with Hogan and Vince, and I guess that's where Sylvain Grenier played into it. We didn't really get that much in the video feature, but they tell us that.
Hogan swings for McMahon's head with a chair. Vince ducks, and Hogan nails a member of the Spanish announce team.
Yes, Hugo Savinovich gets, you talk about getting waffled, he gets obliterated here. He's bleeding. The trainers come out and take him away.
Vince with a low blow and a chair shot to Hogan's head. Hogan's bleeding now too.
Then Vince throws Hogan into the cameraman, which I got to chuckle over it.
Hogan's on the announce table laid out. Vince gets a ladder, puts it next to the table. So between the two announce tables, he's got the ladder set up. He climbs to the top and then starts mocking Hogan, cupping the ear, and the crowd is angry.
Bleeding profusely still at this point.
And then he drops a leg off the ladder onto Hogan through the table. Both men are down. And this match has gotten so much better with all this craziness on the outside.
Exactly. The second they stopped trying to do a wrestling match and instead just did a crazy hate-filled brawl, this thing kicks into high gear. We then, Hogan, like you said, is bleeding. They're back in the ring. Vince goes for the cover twice. Hogan kicks out twice. Vince then goes out to the floor and gets a lead pipe. And then we get one of the all-time great camera shots in professional wrestling history. Vince McMahon is, like, as I said, he grabs the lead pipe. We switch from a camera looking from the announce table toward him. Instead, we have a camera that is looking from the other side of the ring across, and you just see slowly the bloody, demented face of Vince McMahon rise over the apron as
Crazy
I believe Jim
Vince
Ross says he looks like he's the devil himself, and he's not wrong. This was, from a production and show direction standpoint, this was all the stars in the world.
Oh, it was so great. Crazy Vince face. Great production. But Hogan with a low blow on Vince. Both men are down. The pipe is down. And Roddy Piper enters the ring. He was in disguise, strips off his disguise. It's Roddy
Piper. Is he dressed as like a cameraman, or is
I think so.
He's like dressed in all black. He looks like he's gonna like go in a sauna and cut weight for a UFC show. I didn't quite understand what was going on there, but
I
still,
guarantee he
the
was
reveal
not cutting.
great.
He was not cutting any weight based on the size of Piper in this.
No,
and so the place goes absolutely nuts for the sighting of Roddy Piper.
Who has, by the way, for anyone who's listening, I assume will know, but if you don't, serious both storyline and real life history with Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan. And the idea here as he comes in is that he basically hates both guys more than anything in the world. So what is he going to do?
Piper grabs the pipe and teases who's he going to hit with it, but everybody knows. And sure enough, he nails Hogan with it, tells Hogan to kiss his ass, and the people boo loudly. So Piper, again, cheered like crazy. People are excited to see the legend. Hits Hogan with a pipe. This is how popular Hogan was on this nostalgia tour, that just the act of attacking Hogan, people were booing Piper loudly out of the building. He leaves to a chorus of boos.
Yes, and you could tell he's clearly loving it. As great as Roddy Piper was as a babyface, I'll take anything that gives me even 15 seconds here of Roddy Piper being the most hated man in the world. This was great.
Vince for the cover. Hogan kicks out. Vince beats up referee Brian Hebner. Tries to throw him over the top rope. Doesn't really work out.
And then he just ragdolls him. Like, I'm assuming Hebner probably got even more of a beating backstage afterward than he did here in the ring. But yeah, Vince tries to throw him through the ropes. He gets hung up in the ropes. He grabs him again, ragdolls him, kicks him, and eventually gets him to the floor. Then waves to the entrance for referee Sylvain Grenier from Montreal, who is out to, I'm assuming at this point, not call it right down the middle like Bill Alfonso would.
Vince hits Hogan again with the pipe. Vince with the Hulk Hogan leg drop onto Hogan, but Hulk's able to kick out, and he begins to Hulk up.
My only quibble with this match, he kicks out. If Sylvain Grenier came in here, why is he just doing a normal count?
Yeah, why didn't he do a fast count of 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, we get a super long 2.9 here. We don't even have a hint of a fast count from the crooked ref. That's my only quibble with this whole match. I hate the
crooked ref. It's always a logic gap. He begins to Hulk up. The place goes absolutely insane for the Hulk up. This was the total nostalgia, the greatest hits, and the people were having fun. The finger wag, punch. Hogan throws out Sylvan. 3 punches to Vince. Boot to the face. People want the leg drop. He teases it, nails it. Another one. A third leg drop. Hebner comes out for the 3. Hogan wins. Hogan poses while the people eat up every single minute of it. Shane McMahon then makes his way down in a suit. Hogan invites Shane into the ring. Shane comes in to check on Vince as Hogan celebrates to the back. 20 minutes, 48 seconds of fun on a nostalgia tour.
Yes, I wrote down that was a wild, entertaining ride, and that's yeah. I was not looking forward to watching this again, having very little recollection of certain aspects of this show, uh, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. It was very fun.
Live in the building, I remember now collapsing into my seat, saying, "Whew, what a show. What a night. I am having a great time." And then the graphic appears on the screen. Holy crap, we still have Austin and The Rock. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow.
that's what we meant earlier when we said this is a loaded roster and a star-studded show. You just had Hulk Hogan versus Vince McMahon. That is then followed by Steve Austin versus The Rock, which that isn't even the main event of this show.
And we're still not to the main event. No, and the video recap explains how Rock has never beaten Austin at Mania, but he's accomplished everything else. It's eating him, and he can't go back to Hollywood until he wins. The Rock has just an amazing entrance video. It's a helicopter
Yes.
over LA, and then you get a whisper that just says, "Is cooking." and and then you get a slowed down version of his theme song. This heel Rock is the greatest thing ever. We took it for granted. Go back and watch some of this stuff. You took it for granted. You didn't appreciate it enough. It was absolutely fantastic stuff.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. That I will still go to my grave saying that I can't stand face Rock at all. But here, as a heel, I had thrown the baby out with the bathwater with The Rock. He was so awesome here. He just everything he did as a heel was fantastic. The one thing I wrote in my notes as these two men came out to the ring and the match was about to start, and you just see everybody standing, how insanely over both these guys are, how hot the crowd is for this match after the roller coaster ride that you and the other 54,000 people went through. It just dawns on me how wild it is to be watching this, and it's the last two legitimate megastars in North American pro wrestling going at it still as regular characters, on the TV show. And granted, that was, not long for the world either in terms of them being regular characters, but it just watching this now, it felt like the end of something, because as big of a deal as John Cena was, as big of a deal, if you want to say, as Roman Reigns was / is, neither of those guys approached the level of mainstream cultural crossover and just megastar status that these two men did.
No, and that's a great point. This was a transition because Rock was going off to Hollywood, and Austin, this would be his last match. Us in the building, we didn't know that we had no idea that this was going to be the last time we'd see Stone Cold's entrance for a match because of his neck injury. It was quietly known internally before the show that Mania was going to be his unannounced retirement match. And Austin had 2 vertebrae fused in late 1999 after suffering from spinal stenosis, which is like a narrowing of the spine.
Which was an epidemic in the WWF at the time. Not only the guys that you mentioned that were out with neck injuries, but they talk earlier on in the show when both Benoit and Rhino are introduced. Yep. They were both themselves coming off recent serious neck injuries and neck surgeries.
And that's why Edge was out, as I mentioned at the beginning of part 1 of this episode. And Austin's condition worsened after he was injured in 1997's match with Owen Hart. Where he broke his neck on the pile driver there. His C6 and C7 vertebrae were also in need of fusion at this point. All Austin, and so this would be Austin's retirement match, and none of us in the building knew it. People backstage knew it. Rock knew it. And he was going to give it his all.
Here, sorry to jump over you. His performance here was that it didn't betray his neck injury at all. For one, he comes in incredible shape.
Yep.
And he is Steve Austin in this match. He's doing moves. He's taking some bumps. To the uninitiated, you're not looking at this and thinking this is a man who's wrestling his last match, which is, I'm sure, exactly how he wanted to go out.
Exactly. And it was all Austin early, including going for a quick stunner, but The Rock slips outside and you could just see Rock super frustrated and angry as he's walking up the ramp. Austin right out after him. We get some brawling. It's awesome intensity. These two had an intensity early that was, unmatched by most. These guys are in a class of their own.
Absolutely. And the other thing you could tell is that Jim Ross clearly knew that this was going to be Steve Austin's last match, because he is, even by normal Jim Ross standards, he is putting in one of the performances of his life here, and is giving everything of his voice and everything he can put into this, which again, this match and these two guys are absolutely worthy of that. But it is notable how hard Jim Ross goes here.
Yeah, and I had never heard the play-by-play for this match, so watching it here live, watching it live, I didn't get to hear it. So watching it on replay here, this was just every bit a classic JR performance, giving it everything that Austin deserved on his way out. And we had Austin beating on the Rock all around ringside. Referees admonishing Austin for choking Rock, and while he's doing that, that gives Rock the opportunity to chop block Austin from behind.
He does it once, and then he also he hits it a second time, if I'm not mistaken, right in front of the announcers. Then there's another great line or great back and forth, if you can call it that, where Lawler calls it a metal knee brace, and then Jim Ross is like, "What the hell else would you make a knee brace out of? Cotton candy?" Yeah. I lost it. I audibly started cackling on my couch, as I want to do from time to time while preparing to record this podcast as we watch these shows. Lawler then is clearly upset by this, and this is where he goes in hard on his "This is WrestleMania,"
this is WrestleMania, JR.
as many times as humanly possible. And he's saying it with a tilt in his voice at the end of the word WrestleMania that is clear that he is trying to get Jim Ross as angry as possible. All the while, this epic historic match is taking place around them.
Rock continues to work over the leg of Austin. Austin fires back with right hands, but gets cut off with a kick by the Rock, who then taunts the fans, and he was hated. This was so great. Just commanding the fans' hatred.
Absolutely.
Sharpshooter by the Rock.
Which at this point, as he locks on the sharpshooter, I noted in my mind a few things. One, if he had just done the Scorpion King movie, why aren't they calling this the Scorpion Deathlock?
It's true.
Two, Jerry Lawler starts talking about Hollywood again. Jim Ross loses it and says, "I don't care. Who cares about Hollywood? I don't care about puppies. It's about two of the best ever going at it in a wrestling ring." It was great.
The Rock drags Austin to the corner by the knee brace. This is one of those things we talk about in the podcast. We love the little things here, and This was a good one. The Rock dragging Austin by that brace.
At this point, that the knee brace definitely wasn't made of cotton candy.
He wraps Austin's leg around the post. Rock then goes outside, puts on Austin's vest, mocking him. This gets Austin fired up. He comes firing back. Both men go down after a double clothesline.
They kill each other with that double clothesline. That's a spot you see often. This was, Jim Ross likes to say, "Oh, this is like a car wreck out on I-95. This sounded like that.
Thez pressed by Austin. Tons of punches from the mount. The Rock, he hits a clothesline and then does a kip up, but walks right into Austin, who delivers a rock bottom on the Rock. The place goes crazy, but only gets a 2 count. Austin goes for the stunner. Rock counters, hits Austin with a stunner of his own. They've each hit each other with their own finishes. Neither can get the win yet. Rock still has Austin's vest on this entire time.
Yes. And Jerry Lawler is saying that he needs to take the vest off because he thinks that's why the Rock is losing in this match now.
Yeah, nothing has gone right since he put that vest on.
That was a rare good Lawler line. I enjoyed that.
Right hands by the Rock. Great punches by both guys in this match. These guys could, when they were brawling and they were throwing punches, these punches were great.
And different punches too. Rock, we've talked about it before. He had that like Scott Hall type of punch where you open your hand at the very last second, so it makes that big slapping sound, but it happens so fast that it looks like a punch. Whereas Austin just has those, great, almost like sidearm right hands that just look like you're in a beer fueled brawl.
Austin hits a stunner out of nowhere, and Rock was always the best at taking a stunner. He bounces around. It's so great.
He flips back. There needs to be, there's the Rick Rude sells the atomic drop. There's this Steven Regal makes faces or whatever. So there needs to be a Rock sells the stunner. I don't know how many gifts there could be, but if there's not a lot of quantity, it would be made up for in quality.
Absolutely. This was so great. Place is on its feet, but The Rock kicks out after that stunner. It was a great near fall. Austin tries to take the vest off of Rock, but Rock nails him with a low blow. The Rock goes for the people's elbow.
Austin throws Hebner down because Hebner's trying to keep him from getting at Rock in the ropes. Austin kind of throws Hebner to the side, and in that split second, Rock is able to hit the low blow.
The Rock goes for the people's elbow, but misses. A stunner attempt countered into a spine buster. The vest is off, and he hits the people's elbow.
At this point, I note that, and this is the understatement of the year, but the crowd is absolutely living and dying with this match, which again is incredible given what the emotional
I told you how exhausted I was going into this match, and we were right back on the roller coaster. So Austin kicks out after the people's elbow. Everyone's on their feet, like you mentioned, going crazy. Rock bottom by The Rock. Austin kicks out.
At this point, Lawler is losing his mind. Or not Lawler, excuse me, Ross is absolutely losing his mind. He's just, again, you're seriously wondering if his voice is going to go out at any point.
Disbelief on The Rock's face with this kick out. Austin fights out of the rock bottom, but Rock is able to hit another one. No, Austin kicks out again. And JR is going absolutely crazy, putting this over as what an epic battle it is.
Putting over Austin trying to get up. He'll never give up on you. He'll never give up on anyone.
Yes, this match is amazing. I'm having such a great time rewatching this. Austin fights his way up, and The Rock hits a third rock bottom, this time for the win.
And before he hits it, though, it's great. He sort of locks him in position for the rock bottom and kind of looks around and takes it all in, then hits him with the third one and gets the win. Just, fantastic wrestling, fantastic storytelling, great announcing from Jim Ross, even with Lawler trying his hardest to drag it down.
You get The Rock celebrating, and then you can see Rock say something to Austin as he's celebrating. I'd love to know what he said right there, but it was awesome. Rock celebrates. He goes to the back. Austin then gets his moment. He's able to salute the crowd with his middle fingers at the top of the stage, saying goodbye to the WWE audience. 17 minutes, 53 seconds. This was so much fun.
Yeah, it was. Ross says this is two of the greatest the business has ever seen. They gave you absolutely everything they had, and you certainly can't argue with that. This, in some ways, it absolutely should have been the end of the show. It's insane that anyone had to follow that. But I had not completely remembered that this was, in fact, the final match for Steve Austin until they hit his music, and like you said, he celebrated in the entranceway. And
and they never said it. They never said it at all in the broadcast. The next night on Raw, he was, quote, fired by Bischoff, and that was it. He was gone. Yeah, and it was in some ways a fitting end for Austin to not have, the big in-ring send-off just for that character. Who knows if that would have really if that would have worked, I mean, I'm sure it would have been great, but it just wouldn't have fit the Austin character. But it really was in a lot of ways a perfect match for what these two guys were, what they had meant to the company, what they had meant to overall to wrestling. And the fact that this was Austin's send off, in a lot of ways, Rock's send off, as far as him being a full-time wrestler and eventually going to Hollywood full-time, it delivered 100%. And now, if you can believe it, we still have the main event to come here. WWE Championship. The champion is Kurt Angle. The challenger is Brock Lesnar. We get a video package showing Lesnar winning the Royal Rumble. That was an awesome Royal Rumble, by the way. If you want to go back and watch a fun Rumble, the 2003 Rumble of Lesnar winning That was great. Angle, we're told, can lose the title on a DQ or countout. So we talked at the beginning of part 1. I told you about how injuries were the story of 2003. Let's talk about Kurt Angle's condition going into this match. As reported by Dave Meltzer in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Angle needs to undergo neck fusion surgery. It is believed Angle has 4 herniated discs. 2 of them are pressing on his spinal cord, which has caused nerve damage on his left arm and shoulder, which you could see in this match when he comes out that the muscles were atrophying on his left side. And Michael Cole even brought it up that he's dropped weight to be quicker in this match.
Yeah, they said that he had cut 7 pounds to be quicker. And yeah, he still physically, like at first glance, looked great. But when you looked closer, yes, you could tell that one side was smaller than the other.
The surgery was originally scheduled for March 17th, this show being on March 30th. But it's being moved to early April. The original plan for the WWE Championship was the title would change hands on March 11th, Kurt Angle losing to Brock Lesnar in Pittsburgh, which didn't happen because Angle himself asked Vince McMahon on March 10th to allow him to do the match at WrestleMania. Angle went to all the key parties, Lesnar, Chris Benoit, who was to get the spot at Mania to challenge Lesnar, as well as Kurt Angle had to talk to his wife about making this decision. McMahon was expecting that Angle would change his mind at the end, but he didn't. And Angle would go to the ring at WrestleMania with limited strength on the left side of his body and being in extreme neck pain. So we mentioned earlier Chris Benoit was in the tag team title match. They would have had, if Kurt had gone and done his neck surgery, he would have lost to Lesnar at the SmackDown show. Lesnar would come into Mania as champion and defend against Chris Benoit. But instead, Kurt Angle is going to fight through this pain. So Angle's out first. We get tons of pyro for him. Michael Cole is losing his voice at this point. Lesnar comes out. He's got his ribs taped up. And we're alerted to the fact that this is Lesnar's first WrestleMania, and he's in the main event of his first WrestleMania. And what a performance this guy lived up to. In your first WrestleMania being in the main event, Lesnar did an amazing job, and Kurt Angle was an absolute monster to be able to power through that neck pain in this match. If you didn't know that he had neck problems going into this, you would have had no idea the way that Angle wrestled this match.
Yeah, absolutely. No, he was fantastic. He looked great. And yeah, there was nothing that would indicate that this was a guy who needed serious surgery and really shouldn't have been in the match. We also had in the video feature, they showed us where on SmackDown, and maybe that was that Pittsburgh show that you talked about, where
the Eric Angle.
Yes, where it was Angle. It was supposed to be Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle for the WWE title. And Angle comes out with his, he's wearing his warm-up jacket with the hood up. Lesnar comes out, immediately bull rushes him, hits him with the F5, and goes to pin him. But then right as it's about to be a 3 count, he gets up because he sees Team Angle out on the entranceway. At that point, Kurt Angle then comes into the ring, rolls out this mystery man, lays down like he's hurt. But then when Lesnar goes to cover him, he's not hurt. He beats Brock Lesnar, and then we learn that it is, in fact, his brother, Eric Angle, who was in the ring at the start of the match, and that's sort of how they got out of that advertised world title match then.
Lockups and back and forth early. These guys were so quick, and they were doing all their amateur wrestling and reversals.
Awesome.
So awesome. Angle gets the advantage by going after the injured ribs of Lesnar. Angle hits a German suplex, and Lesnar pops right up. Angle goes to whip Lesnar to the corner, but Lesnar counters with a press slam. Wow, what a counter. That's not what you expect off a whip into the corner, to be just pulled into a press slam. Absolutely impressive.
How about before that? I would make the argument the loudest shoulder block that I've ever heard in
Sure.
my life.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle goes running at Brock Lesnar with a shoulder block, full speed. He hits him, and it sounds like a gun goes off, and he just bounces off Lesnar and falls to the mat. It's crazy.
Angle with a kick to the ribs allows him to get control. He grabs Lesnar and gives him a German suplex into the buckles. It looked
At which point
terrifying.
We get Michael Cole talking about another one of his Cole-isms is a high and tight suplex. Because like he hears Taz say something legit about a suplex, and then he has to say it but not use it right.
The German suplex into the buckle, it looked brutal. It was terrifying because if you took it wrong, it would be wildly dangerous. But
yes,
if you take
he took it very well though.
He took it well. Yeah, and it made me want to see that someone should bring that move back. I thought that was very cool.
You see it a lot, like in Japan or in the indie scene, and it never looks as good as this, and more so, it never looks as safe as this. A lot of times, guys do it, and it looks like instant death. Whereas here, it looked great, but he hits high enough or in a safe enough spot on his back that there really isn't going to be any injury, but it still is visually spectacular.
After that spectacular move, it's all Angle after that. Angle gets Brock in a choke, almost like a rear naked choke on the ground. And then Angle turns it into a camel clutch type move. But
well, yeah, he has the freestyle bow and arrow where you kind of have almost a rear naked choke, but then you also have one of the legs hooked in almost an STF sort of step over toe hold type position. And then, he transfers from that into this camel clutch type move, but he has one knee in the back of Lesnar as he's pulling up on the back of the neck.
Yeah, in a normal camel clutch, you'd be straddling the back of Lesnar, but he's sitting to the side, and he's got his knee buried into the back, into the Brock's injured ribs as he's pulling back on Brock's head. This was absolutely cool.
We should also note at this point that while the crowd isn't chanting boring and they're not leaving, this is the point to where we finally see the emotional exhaustion of the crowd here as they react to the big suplexes. But outside of that, like in this particular spot that you're talking about, this long submission hold, first the freestyle bow and arrow into that modified, rear chinlock camel clutch. They're clearly trying. That is a spot that is designed to get the crowd to rally behind Brock Lesnar, and they keep going with it in hopes that they'll get that response, and they don't. So they finally just go up and continue.
Yeah, and the way they continue is by Brock powering out. He stands up and rams Kurt back first twice into the buckles before breaking the hold.
Angle is on his back, sort of like rear naked choke style, both legs off the mat, wrapped around, the hooks are in, and Lesnar just runs full speed back first, Angle back first into the corner. This is one of those deals where it looks like, well, if Angle's back wasn't bothering him before, it would be now.
One of my favorite spots right here, Kurt with a running knee to Brock's back, knocks him out to the floor.
Well, he hits him with two of them, if I remember correctly. He hits him with one, it doesn't knock him out, and then he hits him again, and that knocks him out to the floor, and things pick up from there.
Back in the ring, Brock battles back with power moves, multiple belly-to-belly overhead suplexes. So far in this match, Kurt Angle is so great. He's better than you remember listening to the show right now.
Yes, absolutely.
And especially when you know how hurt he was in this match. He's way better than you remember.
And this also doesn't necessarily fall into that Angle pattern that I feel like, there's a lot of his big matches. They're great, but they're very, very similar. This didn't feel exactly like that.
No. And Brock was doing more wrestling moves than you would think of if you're just thinking of a modern Brock Lesnar match. He was doing a ton of wrestling moves, and Brock is a really talented pro wrestler. He can do these moves to perfection.
This was not like post MMA career Suplex City Brock Lesnar, which is still entertaining in its own way, but this was a much more varied offense from Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, Brock was so talented for how young he was. Absolutely unbelievable at this point.
Well, he had been in the company for a couple years at this point as far as being on TV, but it felt like it was almost a year. It was a long period of time where they were using him in dark matches, but not actually putting him on TV. But still, to step in and immediately be as great as he was, it's not something you normally see.
Angle hits 4 rolling German suplexes. Awesome. Now, with an injured neck.
Yeah.
So a little terrifying there, but awesome exchange where Kurt goes for the Angle slam. It gets countered into an F5 attempt, which is countered into the ankle lock. Angle.
Well, it's not like countered into the ankle lock, but it's beautifully countered into it. He hits this inside trip. It's like ankle pick.
Yeah, the way he
is great, and B, Taz freaks out about how awesome it is, which I love.
The way he did that counter the F5, Angle, he basically puts Lesnar in a front face lock and then does the inside trip to Lesnar, taking him down.
Yes.
It was such smooth transitions between these counters. It was unbelievable. It was so great to watch. Kurt, he charges in for another knee to Lesnar, but Lesnar backdrops him high in the air over the top rope to the floor.
Almost nobody in wrestling took better over the top rope bumps than Kurt Angle. He was the master of, we talk about things that look dangerous but aren't, or look like they hurt but really don't. He takes these wild, crazy over the top bumps, but then at the very end lands in a very safe manner.
Super controlled, yeah.
Yes.
Back in the ring, Kurt hits a release German, and Lesnar does a complete flip, landing face first. Unbelievable. Angle follows it up with an Angle slam, but Lesnar kicks out. This was the first time someone had kicked out of an Angle slam.
This was one of the problems that I had with Michael Cole on this show, though. You just said that with more passion and intensity than Michael Cole did. He just says so casually, I believe that's the first time anyone has kicked out of the Angle slam, as we're here in the main event of WrestleMania.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So Kurt goes for another one. Lesnar rolls him up for a 2 count. Brock picks up Angle, nails an F5, 2 count only, but not a kick out. Kurt just rolled the shoulder up. This was a great near fall. The place, you were talking about, the place was a little quiet earlier. They were catching their breath. This
got him back.
This got him. This near fall, the crowd popped huge for this one.
Can we also note this was another time where a finisher got hit. It took a few seconds to cover, and the guy kicked out.
Yeah, sorry, Booker.
Everybody other than Booker T apparently gets to do that.
Ankle lock one more time by Angle. Lesnar to the ropes. An Angle slam is countered into another F5, and the crowd is on its feet at this point. Lesnar begins to climb to the top rope. I am in my seat, and I turn to my friend Jeff sitting next to me, and I knew he was going to go for the shooting star press here.
Which he did, by the way. He had never busted it out on WWF television, WWE television, but he did it somewhat regularly in OVW. So people were waiting for years. We knew he could do this, and we were wondering when he was going to bust it out. And yeah, as he hits the F5 and doesn't go for the pin and starts to look toward the top rope,
he never would climb to the top rope, so you knew this was it. And I am literally screaming from my seat, he's too far away.
He's 3/4 of the way across the ring, and that's not an exaggeration.
No, he was so far away, and I'm screaming it from my seat. And Lesnar goes for, because the corner that Lesnar did the shooting star press from is, my seat was 4 rows behind that post. So like I have the perfect view of this, and I'm like, he's too far away.
You're basically his manager at this point.
Yes, I'm screaming. No, he does not listen to me. And so he goes to the top. He goes for the shooting star press. He comes up short. From my seat, I have the reverse angle of what the camera shows. Okay, so the camera's showing Lesnar doing the shooting star press, coming up short.
Yeah, the camera is shooting from the opposite side of the ring of you. So the camera is shooting, and it's seeing Lesnar coming toward. You're seeing Lesnar come toward you, whereas where you were sitting, Lesnar's going away from you. And as I would imagine, as he's landing, you have a perfect view of him spiking himself head first,
going head first. And I screamed, I howled that, like, I thought he broke his neck from my angle. I thought he broke his neck. I don't think it was from the camera's angle, it looked nasty, but it didn't look as absolutely terrifying.
Once you see
the
replay they show after the match is when you get an angle somewhat similar to what you had live.
Oh my
God! And you really
so
see
scary.
how bad it was. But I do recall watching this on pay-per-view and freaking out, like, obviously not as much as you were there live.
I thought he broke his neck.
Yeah. I did too. I was 100% convinced that he broke his neck. 100% convinced.
Angle, being so smart, immediately goes for the cover because Brock missed the shooting star press, right? So Angle goes for the cover immediately, and which was smart. Lesnar kicks out. And I'm sure that Lesnar was supposed to win there, so it was quick thinking by Angle. Kurt picks Lesnar up, boot to the stomach. We get an F5 by Lesnar for the 3 count. New WWE champion, but we're not celebrating. We're all concerned for the health of Brock here.
Well, they show the replay and Taz screams and says, and I quote, "How is Lesnar not dead?" And I'm sitting here agreeing completely. Lesnar, meanwhile, they show him in the corner trying to get up. He's bleeding a little bit from his nose.
Oh, and his face is messed up. No,
he's completely out of it. Like the lights are on, but nobody's home. His eyes are just he's gone.
Yes, he's got a matte burn on his face. There's blood coming down from his nose. His eyes are completely glassed over. He doesn't get up. He's just sitting in the corner.
Yeah.
Angle comes over and helps him up. They embrace as the fireworks go off and we end the show. This show is amazing. I love this show. It holds up just as well as I remember it live. It was so much fun. After the show, however, Lesnar would be carried out. So it went off the air.
So why I'm laughing is because you say after the show, what do we get? After the actual live action ends, we get an immediate video package recapping the show with yet more Limp Bizkit.
No. Yeah, see, live in the building, we get Lesnar carried out on a stretcher and taken to a hospital.
Wow. Yikes. So
a
bit more of a downer.
Yeah, he ended up spending the night in the hospital, and he was lucky to only have a sore neck and a concussion. 21 minutes, 4 seconds for this match. This match it would have been the match of the night if the finish didn't bring it down a little bit because we were just so concerned for the health of Brock Lesnar. This would have been the match of the night. It was unbelievable, and these guys were able to follow Hogan, Vince, and they were able to follow Rock and Austin, and I thought they delivered. I loved everything about this match. It was so progressive in 2003. It was absolutely fantastic.
I thought it was very good. I didn't necessarily think you might be a little bit higher on it than I was. Again, I think for me it might be, well, A, I wasn't there live, and then B, I think if this match had happened on a normally structured show where you didn't have 2 exhausting main events before that, and you had the crowd reaction that the match deserved, I think it maybe would have felt a little bit better than it did.
Very
but no,
true.
I mean,
if it had gone on earlier and had more of crowd reaction, absolutely, I think it'd be remembered.
If this was like the main event of SummerSlam or the main event of, well, I won't say the Royal Rumble because the Rumble match goes on last, but the main event of a major pay-per-view that didn't have Austin and The Rock and Hogan and Vince beforehand, I think it, maybe even have a higher opinion of it. But no, very good action. Very entertaining show. Like I said, a few things that I absolutely despised from the show, but by and large, I mean, I would have to go back and watch other WrestleManias, but I can't think of too many that had more.
No, top to bottom.
Yeah, top to bottom, both good, good fast-paced action early, and then 3 main events that all delivered in completely different ways. It's hard to find outside of the abhorrent Triple H Booker T storyline and announcing and the way that played out, and the dumb cat fight thing. Outside of that, you really can't find too much to fault with this show, if really anything.
So things that you didn't see watching this on television that happened in the arena. So John Cena actually made an appearance in arena. He was supposed to challenge a couple famous rappers to a rap battle, but no one showed up. So he did his raps with cardboard cutouts of the other rappers on the stage.
Wow.
Fabulous was his scheduled antagonist, but he pulled out 2 days before the show. Live, it was super fun, and this was John Cena's first WrestleMania appearance, and I really enjoyed that action. And Cena had made the proclamation that he would be in the main event of WrestleMania as soon as next year. While he did not make it to the main event next year, he would be in one of the main event matches in WrestleMania 21.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool symmetry that his first WrestleMania appearance was the last WrestleMania appearance and last match of Steve Austin.
It was a perfect encapsulation of the transition that was happening here.
Exactly.
And the other thing that aired in the arena, we got a Goldberg video package in the arena announcing that Goldberg was coming to WWE after this event. So
how did the crowd react to that?
The guys next to us were not Goldberg fans, but the majority of the arena was thrilled. So I assumed that the guy who didn't like Goldberg also liked Limp Bizkit. So I don't take his opinion. I take it with a grain of salt. But I think that Goldberg coming to WWE got a huge reaction. And it was believed that Rock's agreement to stay on for an extra month after this WrestleMania and work the Backlash pay-per-view was largely predicated on Goldberg signing. Rock had been the major impetus in getting the deal done. As both McMahon and Goldberg were at first reluctant about it, Rock helped make that happen. So Goldberg and how WWE screwed up Goldberg coming. That's another podcast.
Well, I recall a backstage segment in one of Goldberg's first nights in where he did a back and forth with Goldust, and Goldust put a wig on him and he just stood there and let it happen. And I remember sitting there watching like, oh yeah, okay, this is the exact moment where they killed Goldberg. I didn't think that was possible, but they're capable of anything apparently.
So this show, it was incredible how deep this talent roster was. So many legit Hall of Famers on this show. I was surprised that it did so poorly with the amount of buys and everything going into the show. I wonder if it was the Vince Hogan stuff that didn't draw well, or if Angle and Lesnar just didn't have the mainstream appeal. I don't know
I think
why
too,
this show wasn't a success.
This was still also at the height, or I don't know if height is the right way to put it, but I can just think back to how I felt at this time. And granted, I did order it, but I don't think you can put a fine enough point on how disillusioned people who have been longtime fans of WCW and of ECW were at this point with wrestling and the direction it had taken, with those two companies dying and then just being buried 6 feet under by the WWE. And if you were a non WWF/WWE fan growing up and they were the ones who won and that presentation was what won, I think for some people they needed a break, and some people came back years later, and as we've seen as the years have gone by, a lot of people never did.
Best match for you on the show?
Rock Austin, I think by far. And there's a lot of good stuff in this show. I really like Jericho Michaels, and maybe just strictly from in-ring work, like I said, particularly the second half of the show. But just Austin Rock was very, very good in ring. And then just the drama of those two guys, like I said, the scene of the last two true megastars in wrestling, and then Jim Ross just making that match, taking it to an even higher level. I would have to go with that.
For me, it's Jericho Michaels. It probably would have been Angle Lesnar if not for the letdown at the end. But Jericho Michaels live and on the rewatch is so great. The storytelling in that match is so great. The build up to that match, I loved everything about the delivery and the presentation of this match. Jericho Michaels for me, hands down. Rock and Austin, there's no wrong answer here. There were so many great matches to choose from on this show. If you're going to go back and watch and you're going to pick and choose, go out of your way for Jericho Michaels. Go out of your way for Rock and Austin, and treat yourself to the main event as well, I'd say.
Absolutely. Now, as far as worst match goes, I have no problem saying that even though the in-ring work of the match was fine, it's Booker T versus Triple H. Nothing Nothing infuriated me more than that on the show or on anything we've reviewed yet on this podcast, and probably anything that I've watched in my 36 years in watching professional wrestling.
The announcing was terrible from Lawler. The storyline itself was horrendous. The finish buried Booker 6 feet under. This was absolutely terrible all around. But the match was actually I enjoyed the match.
Was fine.
It was fine. The match I did not enjoy was Undertaker against Big Show and A-Train.
Yeah.
So for me, that's my worst match.
That would be for me if Booker and Triple H, that match didn't do to me what it did.
Yeah,
everything surrounding it. Yeah, I think in-ring work, clearly that match, the Undertaker match, was the worst of the lot.
Yeah, absolutely. But top to bottom, I'd say, it's hard pressed to find a better WrestleMania. I think this was one of the best of all time. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. A reminder, every single Thursday, we will post on social media what event that week's episode will cover. So make sure you're following us on all the social media platforms, Twitter and Instagram. That's the best way to interact with the show, at WrestleAtRandom, Facebook.com/WrestlingAtRandom as well. All of the links for social media, for subscribing to the podcast, for the entire back catalog can all be found at the website WrestlingAtRandom.com. Please subscribe, rate and review. If you have a positive review, please leave it. If you've got feedback and criticisms, you send that to us on Twitter. You don't post that on the iTunes and Apple Podcast reviews. Save that for the positive reviews. Give us the feedback on the Twitter. And make sure you tell your wrestling fan friends about us. Tell your lapsed fan friends about us that haven't listened to a show. I've got people listening to the show that haven't listened to wrestling since the late 90s, and they're enjoying the back catalog of our show. So make sure you tell your friends about us. We rely on that word of mouth to continue to spread the word about this show. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Adam, any last thoughts?
I don't know. I would agree that this was a great show. I feel like we're getting on the right track. The randomizer has done us pretty well these last two shows after forcing us to watch Bash at the Beach 2000. So hoping, having my fingers crossed that when we post on Thursday, it will be good news. But if not, it'll likely be a terrible show. And those are almost as much fun to review. So good times.
Absolutely. It's definitely good times. Thanks for joining us, Adam.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you again